For 3 decades, Sean Combs built a multi-billion-dollar cultural empire. But beneath the red carpets and the executive suites, an entirely different kind of operation was running in the shadows. When Homeland Security agents raided his homes in 2024, they found the tools of this hidden enterprise. The inventory included 6 firearms, 3 with defaced serial numbers, ammunition capable of piercing body armor, and over 1,000 bottles of baby oil and lubricant. It was a jarring discovery for a man whose cultural dominance was absolute. As the founder of Bad Boy Records, the architect of Ciroc Vodka, and the face of the Sean John fashion line, his influence spanned music, fashion, and lifestyle. But a 2024 federal indictment laid out a starkly different reality. Prosecutors charged that the infrastructure supporting these brands functioned as a legally defined racketeering and sex trafficking enterprise. Combs' vast corporate resources functioned as a private infrastructure, a closed loop of security and transportation that shielded his conduct from the outside world. The collapse of that system began in late 2023. Cassandra Ventura, known professionally as Cassie, filed a civil lawsuit detailing years of horrific abuse, forcing a private reality into the public record. As his longtime girlfriend and assigned artist on his label, Ventura was trapped in an extreme power asymmetry. Combs controlled her recording contracts, her income streams, and ultimately her physical movements. If she tried to leave, the consequences were severe. In 2016, a surveillance camera at an intercontinental hotel captured Combs chasing Ventura down a hallway, throwing her to the ground, kicking her, and dragging her back to a room. That violent hallway encounter revealed the exact methods he used to enforce total obedience. Ventura's trauma laid bare the absolute control Combs maintained over virtually everyone in his orbit. The most disturbing manifestation of this control occurred during events Combs referred to as freak-offs. These were highly choreographed, multi-day sexual performances involving commercial sex workers, heavily fueled by drugs, with Combs directing and recording the acts. Maintaining these marathons required a complex logistical chain. Staff booked hotel suites, coordinated travel for sex workers, and procured narcotics. The physical exhaustion was so extreme that participants routinely required intravenous fluids to rehydrate afterward, administered medically. Participants were also covertly filmed. Combs accumulated an archive of these recordings, which prosecutors labeled collateral, leverage he held over his victims to guarantee their absolute silence. By combining forced narcotics, physical exhaustion, and the threat of catastrophic public exposure, these events functioned as inescapable psychological traps. Psychologically, this behavior aligns closely with the dark triad of personality traits: the calculated manipulation, the lack of empathy, and the obsessive need for admiration point heavily to extreme narcissism and Machiavellianism. In many corporate environments, these traits would trigger immediate alarms. But in the hyper-competitive recording industry, his ruthless need for absolute dominance was praised and rewarded as a visionary business asset. Employees felt this dominance firsthand. At trial, a former assistant testifying under the pseudonym Mia detailed how she was subjected to forced 20-hour workdays, kept awake for nearly a week on Adderall, and physically assaulted, leaving her entirely brainwashed. Singer Dawn Richard testified that after she witnessed Combs physically beat Cassie Ventura, he threatened that she and others could, quote, go missing if they ever spoke about the violence. The prosecution framed these threats as instrumental violence. This is harm used as a specific management tool designed to keep a circle of peers and employees silent and compliant. When the case finally reached a Manhattan federal courtroom in the summer of 2025, a complex problem emerged. The psychological reality of the abuse was on a direct collision course with the rigid, mechanical definitions of the law. The defense built an unexpected argument. They claimed the freak-offs were actually highly choreographed sexual performances created for amateur pornography, framing it as a toxic but entirely consensual swinger lifestyle protected by the First Amendment. The prosecution countered with a very different reality. They argued that when one person holds all the financial leverage, distributes heavy narcotics, and possesses blackmail footage, true consent is literally impossible. This debate forced the jury into a profound dilemma. How can the justice system accurately measure consent when one individual holds the total power to destroy the other's life? In July 2025, after 3 days of deliberation, the jury delivered a complex split verdict. They acquitted Combs on the most severe charges, including racketeering conspiracy and sex trafficking by force. Instead, they convicted him on 2 specific counts of transportation to engage in prostitution across state lines. Combs remains incarcerated at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn. Depending on the outcome of his appeals, his projected release date is set for May 2028. The federal statutes struggled to definitively label Sean Combs a sex trafficker. But the extensive trail of witness testimonies, hotel surveillance, and seized physical evidence leaves behind a meticulously documented blueprint showing exactly how a psychological predator can use immense wealth to build an empire of exploitation.